as I could, just for good measure. So, over the few days after being woken up, of course, life's not exactly great, but I mean, pretty much straight away you're like, holy shit, I can actually breathe again. Cool. And but at the same time, of course, there's the mass delusions that you start having. Some of that from the morphine, and some of that from the just the extraordinary amount of trauma that your whole system's just been through. I mean, I saw interesting things like nurses dancing around dressed as cats, and another nurse cooking fish on a barbecue with a speedboat on a trailer in the background. And, yeah, just stuff that you just kind of knew wasn't actually happening, but I mean, even now my brain still tells me that it did happen. And you know, the funny thing, I mean, of course, hey, you all work in hospitals, you know crazy things happen at Christmas time. So it's entirely possible that there was actually a nurse running around dressed as a cat. That's something that really messes with my head. But anyway, so after, I mean, normally you spend about a week or so in ICU after having a lung transplant. It's a little bit less for a heart transplant because, I mean, hell, I've met people who have had a heart transplant, and like one guy who's a couple of years younger than me, he had his op took 3 hours, and he woke up and was up and walking around 3 hours after that. And it's like, what? 6 hours after starting the operation, you're up and walking around again. And this is after me having a 12-hour operation, when a lung transplant is normally about 6 to 10 hours. And yeah, of course, even after 2 weeks, I'm still in ICU, kind of bedridden and not really able, you know, still kind of slowly getting my mobility and everything else back. But I got there in the end, and yeah. Anyway, by the time I got to the ward after that couple of weeks, we then discovered that I have this lovely thing called a bazoa. Now, is there anyone here who would like to explain that? I didn't think so. A bazoa is a post-transplant complication that I'm pretty sure is unique to CF, but it's unique to lungs at least anyway, where basically the main nerve into your stomach actually shuts down after the op. It's not something that everyone gets, but there's one other guy I know of at least that has got it. And so then everything that goes into your stomach actually kind of crusts up, which isn't particularly pleasant, because then you get lots of nice lovely bloating, and even taking a sip of water is painful. And ultimately there was 2 ways to kind of correct that. They can either put you under and put a scope down you and break it all up and hope that you know, pass it all, or there's this lovely stuff here, which of course, you know, when you have CF, you kind of drink all your life anyway, and we all know how acidic it is. So I, of course, even had the doctors telling me, drink lots and lots of Coke, which I wasn't going to say no to. But anyway, so that it took a little while to correct, but I mean, it did the job anyway. I think it took about a week maybe, and I was you know, slowly sort of broke it all down, and you know, evacuated it, and was up to, you know, actually eating normally again. Yeah, okay, I got ahead of myself, but never mind. So this is kind of what you look like when you're starting to get your mobility back. I mean, of course, I was fairly thin, so I was fairly stick-like at the time still anyway, but of course you've got to, as soon as you can, start exercising and getting your mobility back. And yeah, so that's what I was tacking on to fairly quickly. So 3 weeks after the op itself, I'm over in Hardy Towers, which is the post-transplant rehab centre for heart and lung recipients, and actually we're the only country in the world who actually has a post-transplant rehab centre for heart and lung transplant recipients, which is pretty cool. So I was over there, and just slowly starting to actually be able to walk around at this point, because you have to be able to walk, well, a certain amount, you know, at least, you know, sort of from here to here, have at least enough mobility anyway to be able to get around there, because it's kind of like, I guess, a big hostel. And you stay there and you have a support person with you, and you go along over to, it's on the site at what used to be the old Greenland Hospital, and you go over to the Greenland Clinic and you have all your tests and your gym and your rehab and all that sort of stuff there. So 6 weeks after the op, and here I am, and as you can see, 6 fingers for 6 weeks. So we deliberately did that just to sort of monitor my progress in that, and just how much weight I was putting on. And it was quite cool to see that, hey, I'm actually starting to get some leg muscle, which of course I just never had, which was quite nice. But I guess, of course, the fact that even 4 weeks after the op, I went into clinic one day there, and I had the head CF and transplant doc and the head transplant recipient coordinator both sitting there, and they're like, so, what was your 6-minute walk test today? And I said, well, it was about 600 metres, and they're just like, literally both of them just almost fell off their chairs, because, well, 600 metres is kind of what they expect for an ordinary, everyday person, for, you know, just you know, an ordinary fit person, right? So to already have that, even less than a month after a lung transplant, is just kind of unheard of. You know, no one recovers quite that quickly, especially given the amount of complications I had on the table itself. But it was just really cool to be able to keep looking back, just even each day, and just seeing how much I was progressing and actually putting on some real muscle, and of course having an abundance of energy and an appetite, something that when you have CF you just don't really have. I mean, how my first day in Hardy Towers, I had 8 pieces of cheese on toast for breakfast because I was that hungry. But I mean, okay, I was also on 40 milligrams of prednisone, so you know, that kind of helped too. And then of course I went and did something a little bit silly about 7 weeks into it. We went up and went on the Auckland Luge, and of course it's not covered, and you have this great big long conveyor belt which takes you, what was it? I think we worked out about 8 or 9 minutes to actually pull you back up to the top. And it was a lovely hot sunny day, middle of January in Auckland, of course. So of course I come back lovely and red, didn't I? And had the coordinators going, cancer, hello, what were you doing? And of course, did I put any sun cream on? Oh, too late now. But yeah, that probably was something I could have thought about doing better. But never mind, it happened. And yeah, anyway, this is in Hardy Towers itself. They have a nice computer with the internet there, which is quite nice. It means you're not completely isolated from the rest of the world when you're still getting your mobility back. And so 7 weeks and 6 days after the transplant, and this is my day of leaving Hardy Towers. And well, this is what it looks like when you've had a lung transplant, obviously. And these two guys on the right here had both had heart transplants, and for that matter, these photos were taken only about 10 days after they had had their heart transplants. That just shows you how quickly they bounce back. And obviously their scars are just slightly different. But yeah, anyway, to have a lung transplant and to be, actually going home after less than 8 weeks.